Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving break. Welcome to week 14 of classes. So, things are going to change a little bit from here on out. Today, we're going to be going over the expectations and requirements for A4, which is your final major assignment in this class. And A4 is, as the name suggests, a reflection. It will encompass two parts. The first part is you will be reflecting on what you've learned over the course of the semester and what specific elements and assignments have helped you learn those things. And you'll be using our course outcomes listed on your syllabus to identify those things that you have learned. And then the second element is here, it's the revision plan. So you'd basically be choosing one of your major assignments, so whether it's A1, A2, or A3, and you'd be crafting a revision plan that outlines what you're going to be revising in that assignment. So you're not actually making the revisions, you're just making a plan. But we do want you to focus on the hierarchy of rhetorical needs, which is what the purpose of the text is, what is the development for audience, etc. So make sure that you explain what you would revise based on its priority to the hierarchy of rhetorical concerns. I want you to focus on 2 to 3 specific revision needs that explain why you chose to prioritize this need. I also want you to outline how you would revise it. So what kinds of research do you think you'd need still, and how might you reorganize some of the evidence that you already have? Or if you have to revise your thesis, what would that new revised thesis look like? And what appeals might you include or take out? What might you want to learn more about your audience? So essentially anything that you feel that, was a major point where either I gave you feedback on it, or something that you're noticing now that you learned that was wrong at the time and that you want to fix. So then I want you to explain how making these revisions would help you achieve your purpose for the assignment as a whole. So it might be helpful to take a look at the rubric for the assignment that you've chosen to revise and make sure that, you're really meeting all of its requirements in your revision plan. And then I also want you to explain how the feedback you received from me, from the Writing Center, from your peers, or maybe even other readers. Maybe you had your parents read it or your roommate. How did all of this feedback influence the way that you write in the future? So that's part 2. I just went into that pretty in depth, but we are going to go back to part 1. I mentioned that you're going to be reflecting on your growth over the course of the semester. And this is going to be 2 pages long, and this is a letter from you to me, your instructor. So in this letter, you're going to be explaining how you grew as a writer and a learner this semester. It should follow the traditional genre conventions of a letter. It should have a salutation with "Dear," my name, and then ending with an appropriate valediction, such as "Sincerely, your name." And things that I definitely want to see in your letter are A, writing growth. So I want you to choose 2 of the course outcomes, which we'll go over briefly, from the syllabus to discuss your growth or your need for growth in the skills that we've worked on this semester. So areas that you feel like you were really strong in, or areas that otherwise you think you could still learn more about. And then in each paragraph, do the following. So identify the outcome and summarize the ways that you interacted with this learning objective in class. Include at least one example from your classwork, readings, homework, or writing assignments to demonstrate what you learned, how you were challenged, and how you improved. And then explain your observations about how you see yourself approaching these skills in the future or outside of this class. So, maybe you didn't know so much about MLA formatting and citations, and now that you've gotten your grounding in that, you can approach it in the future with less hesitation, for example. And then the second part of this reflection is going to be the learner growth. So I want you to explain what you've learned about yourself this semester as a learner and what you would like to continue to work on to improve yourself as a learner in the future. So here you're pretty much free to discuss anything that impacted your learning, whether it was academic or it was a personal experience, anything positive or negative that you learned from that experience. And there are also some suggestions for reflection points in this week's materials that are going to help you fully develop your ideas. So here are some guiding questions. They'll ask you to identify what it is you've learned or come to understand about yourself. Recall one or two concrete experiences which brought this understanding to light, and make sure that you explain both the experience and what the experience revealed to you about yourself. And then reflect on how this understanding will shape how you approach learning in the future. So now that we've gone over the two parts that make up this assignment, I just want to give you a little bit of background on why we're doing this, what the purpose of it is. So this is all about metacognition, which just means that you are thinking about your thinking. And this is a critical skill for any learner, but in a writing class, metacognition is especially important because it determines how we improve as writers. Research actually shows that developing your metacognitive skills can help ensure that you're actually learning things and that they stick with you. So the skills that you develop in this class are applicable to all the classes that you take in the future and, your career and your life outside of academics. So I want to make sure that we take some time to let these experiences and these things that you've all learned sink in. So I am your primary audience for this assignment, which means that, your language should be academic, and you should view this as an opportunity to critically read and document your learning experiences. I'm also interested in reading about your experience in the class, your thought process, and what stands out to you the most that you'll continue to use in the future. So now that we've talked about what A4 will mainly consist of, I want us to take a look at the course outcomes that you have to choose from when you write this part of the reflection letter. So you're meant to choose two course outcomes, and here's what those course outcomes are. So these are also found on your syllabus. This is essentially just stating everything that you should have learned how to do this semester in your CO 150 class. So the first one is deepen rhetorical knowledge. So this means, you know how to identify the rhetorical situation, what the audience is, what the purpose of a text is, and you know how to use voice, tone, format, and structure appropriately to deepen the understanding of relationships between form and content in writing. You can also read texts and written in several genres for different kinds of communities, and these can include professional or disciplinary discourse communities. The second course outcome is to deepen experience in writing. So you've developed recursive strategies for generating ideas, revising, editing, and proofreading for extensive, in-depth, and/or collaborative projects. You know how to critique your own work and others' work, and you can practice reflective strategies. Deepen critical and creative thinking. So this means that you have learned to evaluate the relevance of context. You can synthesize others' points of views with your own position, and you can reflect on the implications and consequences of the stated conclusion. The fourth one is using sources and evidence, which means that you should know how to select and evaluate appropriate sources and evidence and evaluate the relevance of sources to the research question. And then number 5 is deepen application of composing conventions, which means that you know how to apply genre conventions, including structure, paragraphing, tone, mechanics, and syntax, to more extensive or in-depth writing projects. So you know how to write a stakeholder proposal, you know how to write a summary, you know how to write a reflection, and you know that these things would all look different from one another. And then the last one is using specialized vocabulary, format, and documentation appropriately. So that just means that you are adjusting your tone and your language to your audience. So you get to choose whichever 2 of these you want to write about in your reflection letter to me. You could choose any 2 as long as you make sure that you give examples of how, what assignments and what homework and what writing assignments have helped you learn this skill and practice it. I hope that all makes sense. The next 2 weeks, this is our last lecture in this class. So the next 2 weeks you'll spend putting all of this together, drafting your reflection letter to me, and coming up with a revision plan where you choose an assignment, a previous assignment that you will revise. But you don't actually have to revise it unless you really want to. I just need your plan for revision. So if you guys have any questions about any of this, feel free to email me. We will not be having a workshop for this assignment. You will just be putting all of it together and turning it in on December 14th. So you have until then to do this. And the only other thing that is due from here until then is Friday, December 4th. You will have to turn in that traffic light reflection. And it's just going to ask you about, how you felt about some of the activities in the course and things, how things were working. It's really just for me to gauge how you all feel about the class as a whole. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this last lecture. Again, feel free to reach out to me if you want to schedule any office hours visits or if you just have some questions. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful week.